I mean, people may not understand this, but it hurts, to be honest. As an intelligence officer, my job has always been to tell my boss not what they wanted to hear, but what the facts were. And hopefully that I could package these facts in a way that enabled them to make the right decisions. Because, you're part of a team. And so my participation as an intelligence officer is to inform my leadership. And based upon this information, they will make the right decisions that lead to the right choices that lead to outcomes that are beneficial to our cause, victory. So, you know, with Iraq, it is especially painful because I, I'm not bragging here, but I was uniquely qualified, maybe not because of brains or anything like that, but because of the resume. I mean, through serendipity, I actually was somebody who invented the concept of arms control. I was the first weapons inspector on the ground in the Soviet Union implementing the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Oh,
Not
wow.
because I was the best, I was the first. I always tell people there's a couple ways you could become an expert. You can actually go to school, study, and be really smart, or just be the first person to ever do something. And therefore, by the benefit of being the first, you're the only and you're the best. So I helped write the book on on-site inspection. I helped create this notion of human presence for compliance verification. Contributed. I was accurate in my assessments. I'm very proud of the fact that I've been very accurate in my assessments. Presidents of the United States have listened to me. Secretary generals have listened to me. Four-star generals have listened to me. And so here I go and I become a chief weapons inspector in Iraq. I was brought in to head up the intelligence capability. I built an intelligence unit in the United Nations that never existed before. And we were the best. We were the best in the world. The entire world came to us about information about Iraq. So when I resigned and was protesting against the lies being told by the U.S. government, I felt that this should be the easiest case in the world to make. I mean, there was no one more qualified than me to make this case. And I made the case with all the facts I had available to me, which turned out to be 100% correct. Why not? I was the guy who was doing the job. So, of course, I'm going to be accurate in reporting what we did.
Yeah.
But I wasn't able to convince people. I wasn't able to convince the government. I wasn't able to convince the American people. And this weighs on me. It weighs on me every day. People may not realize this, but I was against the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Anybody studies my resume, you saw that I was dead set against it. But when it became clear that we were going to go into Iraq, I was at that time out of active duty. I called the prior service recruiter and I said, "Please bring me back on active duty." He said, "Why would we bring you back on active duty?" I said, "Because I can save Marines' lives. I know Iraq better than anybody out there. There's nobody who knows Iraq better than me. I've been to Iraq. I've been everywhere in Iraq. I can help save Marines' lives because that's my number one priority. I care about the Marine Corps. I care about Marines. I don't want them to die in a war that they don't need to be fighting in." Now, the Marine Corps was happy about that. The CIA said no, so I didn't get an opportunity to go off and do that, which is probably good. I was a little long in the tooth and soft in the belly. Wasn't quite the Marine I used to be at the time. But the point is, I don't do this for gratification. I don't do this to look in the mirror and say, "Man, I'm really good." I do this because it's the right thing to do. And as an intelligence officer, it's my job to tell the people who matter what the truth is, to lay the facts out. And in this case, I always have to ask myself, could I have done it better? Is there something I could have done better? I take no pride in getting it right, because getting it right got it wrong. Getting it right for me, it looks good on the pages of history. But the reality is thousands of Americans died because our leadership didn't do the right thing. And so I don't sit there and pat myself on the back. I wrestle with it. What could I have done differently? Was I too egotistical, too insistent on my facts, unwilling to compromise and debate? Could I have approached this differently, sold it less forcefully so that
I can tell you as a somewhat lesser whistleblower myself, I can confirm to you that there was nothing you could have. These people were hell bent and there would be a war. If Jesus Christ himself came down, I swear to you, I'm saying this literal, that would not have swayed anybody, because you had all the evidence and all the facts out there and they were self-evident. But it just didn't matter because they didn't want the facts. In fact, they wanted you hidden and they wanted you discredited, et cetera, because they wanted anyone discredited because of that. So there's nothing you could have done there. And I totally get the issue about not patting yourself on the back for being right because of the consequences, but you were right. And so that is one of the reasons we are happy to have you on today. And Gary, were we able to find that one for Witkoff I was looking for a second ago? The reason why I play that soundbite there is because while history doesn't repeat, it rhymes, as they say. And to me, when I hear him say this, and then you hear Foreign Minister Arakchi, who was on the other side of that table during that, and when you hear the Omani foreign minister characterize what they view that last 6 hour meeting, where he said they were flummoxed, the other side came out saying, well, what you told us, we thought we had the outlines of a deal, that we would have avoided war altogether. As someone who's been in this similar situation here, and as an intelligence analyst, what can you say about those two contrasting visions?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that, when Donald Trump sent Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to Oman to negotiate, he sent his two most highly qualified people. I mean, Jared has his PhD in nuclear physics, and wait a minute, he doesn't. He's a corrupt real estate broker. And Steve Witkoff doesn't know anything about nuclear weapons or nuclear enrichment either. He's a corrupt real estate broker. And they work for a corrupt real estate broker. I mean, we're already behind the curve here when we have these two people representing, because they have no idea what they're talking about. When the Iranians said they have an inalienable right to enrich, it's Article 4 of the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty, which, because it hasn't been walked away yet by this administration, continues to be the supreme law of the land. I remind people that constitutionally, when we have a treaty that's been signed by the president, ratified by the Senate, it is the supreme law of the land. The supremacy clause of the Constitution. For all you people out there that say you're proud Americans and you're MAGA and all this, we are a constitutional republic where the Constitution is the only thing that matters. And so right off the bat, these negotiators are showing their absolute ignorance. The president has no inherent right to do anything except what the Constitution allows him to do. He doesn't get to go around and say, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. And so we went in there not being honest about what our intent was. We brought people whose job wasn't to succeed, but to fail. Now, the Iranians and the Omanis, on their hand, were looking to succeed. Let's remember what they started off with. We have 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium hexafluoride. That's what they said. Now, if I were Kushner and Witkoff, I would have looked at it and go, whew, okay, they've admitted to having it. So now what we need to do is get it. We need to get the Iranians to turn this over to us. We need to get this diluted down so that we eliminate the immediate threat of nuclear weapons, which is what the president told us publicly what he wants to do. I would have been relieved at that point in time. I would have said, we have a chance now. We have a chance. And again, that's what the Iranians and the Omanis did. They agreed to the procedures in which this 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, which is only 2 cycles of enrichment through 164 centrifuge IR8, IR9 cascade, which the Iranians have, to becoming 92%, which is what makes fissile material for nuclear weapons. So here was our chance to actually get rid of this stuff, to do what the president said he wanted to do, to deny Iran a pathway to a nuclear bomb verifiably, because the other thing the Iranians agreed to at the time wasn't just the return of IAEA inspectors, international inspectors, but they would be accompanied by American inspectors. For the first time in the inspection history of the Iranian nuclear program, American inspectors would be allowed on the ground to verify what the Iranians said. This is the biggest victory in arms control one could imagine if this president was serious about arms control. But the fact is, the day he initiated these negotiations was the day after he agreed upon the date to attack Iran with Benjamin Netanyahu when he visited us. They had already made the decision. We lied. And again, I just want to remind people that, these details are important. Perfidy is a war crime. Okay, perfidy, that hiding behind a flag of truce, is a war crime. Not only have we carried out an illegal war of aggression, and again, Justice Jackson, who is the prosecutor at Nuremberg, has said that he's the guy who prosecuted the German war criminals, hung several of them. The greatest war crime is the crime of an illegal war of aggression, because from that, all other crimes emanate. The United States has just committed an illegal war of aggression, a surprise attack. How many people out there on December 7th hang your head and say a prayer for those who perished in Pearl Harbor when the Imperial Japanese fleet carried out a surprise attack us. A day that will live in infamy, President Roosevelt said, and a day that should live in infamy. Well, we just trumped that. Because what we did is, under the flag of truce, carried out a surprise attack against Iran that assassinated Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. Now, for the people out there who aren't familiar, he is Iran is an Islamic republic. The supreme leader is the head jurisprudent. They call it the Vilayat-e Faqih. He's the head jurisprudent of the faith. He is the equivalent to 12er Shia, which is a faction of the Shia faith, the major faction in Iran, Iraq, and elsewhere, of the Pope for the Catholic Church. So this is like us carrying out a surprise attack against the Vatican to kill the Pope. This is like the Archbishop of Canterbury for the British. We just killed him. It's like Kirill, the head of the Orthodox Church for the Russians. We just killed him. We killed a major religious figure that resonates deeply with these people because they are, after all, the Islamic Republic. This is the man who issued a fatwa. Remember, President Trump says he doesn't want a nuclear bomb. This is the man who issued the fatwa, which has been recognized not only by Barack Obama when he signed the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, back in 2015, where he recognized that we recognize Iran has a religious fatwa or edict that prohibits them from developing nuclear weapons, and we take this seriously. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence for Donald Trump, made the same statement before Congress, and she mentioned the fatwa. She said, there's a fatwa. We have seen no political move by the Iranians to reverse this fatwa. Therefore, there's no evidence of them pursuing a nuclear weapon. The guy who issued the fatwa in 2003 and kept it relevant, we murdered, we killed. And now they replaced him with somebody who says, maybe that fatwa is not all it was. And guess what the Iranians have today? 450 kilograms of uranium hexafluoride enriched to 60% that they can, within a matter of 2 weeks, turn into uranium metal rich to 90%, which can be used to produce 5 to 10, 15 to 20 kiloton nuclear bombs, the size of those we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that can be put into warheads mounted on the Fatah 4 missile, which is now operational, striking Israel as we speak. The weapon we said we don't want them to have, we just opened the pathway for them to have. This.
By the way, we just had, just before you came on here, we had Ambassador Chaz Freeman, who went further than John Mearsheimer has previously on our show, saying he doesn't understand why they haven't. Chaz Freeman said he now thinks they will. Where do you fall on that?
100%. We know that there was a lot of pressure placed on Ali Khamenei, and starting in the fall of 2024, and all, the people around him were saying the Israelis and the Americans are getting ready to attack us. This will be a war of existential survival for Iran. We need nuclear weapons to deter them. And Ali Khamenei said, no, under no circumstances. I met with the Iranian president in September in New York City, and I asked him that question. I said, is your ballistic missile deterrence capable of actually preventing these nations from attacking, or do you need to have a nuclear weapon? He said, we don't want a nuclear weapon. We believe our missiles are enough. But moreover, he said, we're prohibited from even thinking about it because of this fatwa, Ali Khamenei. But Khamenei was under a lot of pressure. And what happened is some certain of the Ayatollahs did get him to admit that if the Islamic Republic of Iran is under existential threat from powers who possess nuclear weapons, then the fatwa can be done and it will be religiously acceptable to produce nuclear weapons as a way of preserving the Islamic Republic in the face of this nuclear threat. Today, we have nuclear-armed Israel and nuclear-armed the United States attacking Iran with existential desires. So we've just literally created justification. If the Iranians couldn't have asked for a bigger favor from us, because if there was people in Iran that wanted a nuclear weapon, what was preventing them was a fatwa issued by the supreme leader. We killed the supreme leader. And the fatwa, there were conditions set where it could be overcome, and we created those conditions. And now we've empowered them. Moreover, we've proven that there is no diplomatic path out of this, because regardless of what Iran may want to do, the United States and Israel can never again be trusted, ever, across the board. And every American should be ashamed.
I mean, aside from just the practicality of what you just said, there's also the literal letter that Trump wrote today on Truth Social saying that there would be no negotiated settlement and only unconditional surrender is now on the table. What does that do to the move that you just described?
Well, that means that the United States will have to unconditionally surrender to Iran when we lose this war, because we are going to lose this war. We can't win this war. We don't have a plan. Our plan changes every 24 hours. We don't have the ammunition. That's proved. We're going to continue the video of things blowing up. I saw in your resume, Colonel, that you were a participant in Operation Desert Storm. So you know full well that we blew up a lot of infrastructure in Iraq as well. I was one of the people to help design the Strategic Air Campaign, and I monitored it as a battle damage assessment officer. And then I went into Iraq afterwards as a weapons inspector and visited all the places that we blew up, all the places that were in our target package. And what I found is that we blew up a lot of buildings. I was told by an Iraqi general, very senior Iraqi general, he said, Mr. Scott, you guys are really good at blowing up buildings, really good. He said, and we're pretty good at pouring concrete. And he said, the thing is, when you blow up the buildings, they're all empty. But when our concrete cures, we put everything back in and we're back in business. And that's what happened to us after Desert Storm. We didn't destroy anything. I'm just here to tell you that straight up. We blew up everything and we destroyed nothing. I can guarantee you right now, this is a war that the Iranians have been preparing to fight for over 20 years, since Dick Cheney threatened to invade them back in 2005. And they have broken their country into 12 autonomous military districts. And each one of these has been preparing. They've been going underground. Firdos, the enrichment facility that Trump bombed, Operation Midnight Hammer. That place wasn't carved out to put in centrifuges. That was part of over 100 different places prepared around Iran to evacuate material, so that when they think they're going to be attacked, sensitive material is evacuated. This one was converted to be used as an underground enrichment facility. But around Iran are hundreds of others that are there to receive all of the precision equipment, all of the production equipment, all the sensitive stuff that's very difficult to replace, very expensive, is now in hiding. We're blowing up empty facilities, and we will continue to blow up empty facilities. And then we pretend that it's victorious, that we're doing some great stuff. We're not. We're not doing anything. And I also want to remind people, if you study history, just take a look at a simple thing. Messerschmitt fighter production in Nazi Germany during World War II. And then plot the number of Messerschmitt fighters built by the Germans in 1942, then in the 1940s, and then overlay the strategic bombing campaign. And what you will see is the more we bombed, the more fighters were produced, because the better the Germans got to adapting to our bombing. Bombing doesn't accomplish anything unless it's attached to sound targets. And we saw, tragically, with the murder of over 170 schoolgirls on the first day of the war, that we have no idea what we're hitting. We used a target deck that's dated 15 years, and we had nobody. Where's the intelligence officer whose job is to go through that target deck and vet it to make sure we have the most up-to-date information, that we're not bombing a target based upon 15-year-old intelligence? I did this in 1985 when I went through the war plan for the amphibious assault against Bandar Abbas and Chabahar. I had to go through each target, because it was my job to do, and go, this is dated information, update the information, vet each target to make sure that we have the most valid, updated information to justify this target still being in the target deck, and to ensure that when we bomb the target, we get the results we want. People need to understand that by bombing that school, we have destroyed our credibility, not only in Iran, but around the world. Again, we are mass murderers. We, the people of the United States of America, are citizens of a nation that has carried out an illegal war of aggression with no legal authorization, an act of perfidy, and mass murder. There's no justification out there at all for murdering 170 schoolgirls.
And Scott, as it turns out, though, I hope I don't give you any PTSD. It's strange to me that when we're trying to sell a war, we're going to bring somebody out who is known to have sold a fraudulent war in 2003. And there was I think it was yesterday, we had a soundbite from an Israeli general who was citing Tony Blair from the 2003 war as another way to justify what we were doing here. And I'm thinking, that's just weird on its own. But let's get to the substance of what she said there. Do you believe that this is an imperative? And because the Iranians have killed all of us before, all we have to do is take away their military capacity now?
I hope I made it clear to your audience that when I said that I was going to, I apologize, a school bus is pulling up in front of my house. My dogs are going crazy.
My dog does the same, so I got
they
it.
do. So hopefully I'll stop barking soon. But when I said that I was willing to go back on active duty, I was willing to go on active duty, not because I supported that war, but because I support Marines. I want to keep Marines alive. And so no one can ever make the case that I would ever articulate anything that could bring harm to my fellow Marines, to soldiers, sailors, the Coast Guard, anybody. American life is sacrosanct. I'm an American patriot, and I will do what I can to preserve the lives of my fellow Americans. But we also have to be realistic here. With all due respect to Condoleezza Rice, who is a war criminal, by the way, she was part of the cabal that led us into the last illegal war of aggression that we waged before this one, which was the illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq. No justification under international law or domestic law. Unlike Desert Storm, again, I just want to remind people, because law is very important. Desert Storm, we had a Chapter 7 resolution passed by the Security Council that authorized the use of military force, and the United States Congress passed a war resolution before the bombs fell that gave us congressional authority to do this as well. So everything we did in Desert Storm may not have been wise, but it was definitely legal. Nothing we've done in Iraq in 2003 was legal, and nothing we're doing to Iran today is legal. In 1979, the takeover of the U.S. Embassy didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because the CIA was working hand in hand with SAVAK, which was the secret police arm of Reza Shah Pahlavi, and they were committing horrific crimes against the people of Iran. And the people of Iran rose up and they took over the embassy. I'm not in favor of that. I wish they hadn't taken the embassy. But to pretend that it happened in a vacuum, that people just woke up one morning and said, hey, what can we do to really get America? No, it woke up because they were furious at the United States, because they were furious at how we had worked with the SAVAK to torture Iranians, that we were giving safe haven to Reza Shah Pahlavi, who had cancer, and he was in the United States. And the Iranians said, no, you got to get him out here, back here to be accountable to us. So they took the embassy. One of the things is the CIA was shredding documents back then. That's before we had cross shredders. And so we had these long strips of 1/8 inch shredded paper. And these students actually pulled out the burn bags that didn't get burned and put all those documents back together, and they published them. And it proves just how bad we were. So when you want to sit there and say that Iran has been at war with the United States for 47 years, I would make the counter argument. The United States has been at war with Iran for even longer than that, because you know who put the Shah in power? We did. How? Through a CIA-orchestrated coup that removed Mossadegh from power in 1953, the constitutionally elected prime minister of Iran. We removed him from power using a CIA coup. We installed this fake Shah, who then, with American backing, butchered the Iranian people until he was removed from power by the Islamic Revolution. What happened in Beirut? Dead set against it. But ask the Marines who were there. They know that we chose sides. We walked into a civil war-like environment, and we chose sides. We started shelling people. We started intervening. We became the enemy, and then we cry when we get treated like an enemy. I don't want those Marines dead. I don't want them dead at all. I want them alive. But the best way to have kept them alive is to keep them out of Lebanon. We put them in a place where they shouldn't have been, and then they paid the ultimate price. Don't blame us when people choose to defend their homeland using the means necessary. Everybody talks about the American Revolution. Of course, we hid behind trees and we hid behind bushes and to shoot at the British redcoats marching in there, because that's the way we had to fight. What do you want people to do when they have to go up against the battleship New Jersey, when they have to go up against aircraft carriers, when they have to go up with Marines with helicopters and everything? You want them to line up and say, kill us, or you want them to use the tactics necessary to achieve the results they want, which is the eviction of Marines from their territory? Again, I don't want Marines dead, but we shouldn't have been there. And then we come down to the toughest one of all, because there's a lot of veterans out now that are going to get really mad at me. I don't care. I don't care if you get mad at me now, because I'm going to tell you the awful truth. If you were in Iraq in 2005, and you got hit with an explosively formed projectile that had been provided to the Shia of southern Iraq, Muqtada al-Sadr's people, by al-Quds Force, Hussein Soleimani and the Iranians, and it killed your comrades, wounded other people, you shouldn't have been there. You do know that you illegally invaded and occupied a sovereign state, that there was no justification for you being there whatsoever. And the people who resided in that country didn't want you there, and they resisted you. Now, what would you do if a foreign power invaded your hometown, kicked in your door, took your family out, lined them up in the streets? Your younger brother came down a little too fast, so the guy shot him because I felt threatened. You don't belong there. We didn't belong in Iraq. We illegally invaded and occupied that nation, and the people who lived next door to them, co-religionists, supported the resistance. It was a resistance movement, and we paid the price. We shouldn't have been there. Do I want any Marines and any soldiers to have died in that? Absolutely not. I wish they were all home doing the right thing, training for a legitimate conflict, one that were a real threat. This was a war of choice in Iraq, a war of choice. We didn't need to be there.
And can I just say that, I mean, and I'm sure that you'll probably resonate well with this one as well. It's hard for me to hear those arguments that she made there about the EFPs and all the stuff that we suffered there. And a lot of it is legit. That probably number 600 probably is close to being right. But yeah. I got to think, what in the world? How do we point a finger at Iran and say that they're worthy of death when we do it on a 4 years basis in Ukraine? Against the Russians for the purpose of killing Russian soldiers? We are doing on an industrial scale what you're saying they did on a moderate scale, and it just
we lost
troubles
600 soldiers. I think is an accurate number. I wouldn't dispute that number. We are responsible. We, the United States, are responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Russian soldiers because of what we provided to the Ukrainians. And remember, that war started when we instigated a coup in 2014. And replaced the legitimate government of Ukraine with Ukrainian nationalist movement that had been supported by the CIA since 1948. If you guys want to get into history lessons with me, I'd be more than happy to do it.
I bet you can. I'm going to get to the Russia-Ukraine here,
but again, the facts are on my side.
Yeah, I'm going to get to the Russia-Ukraine thing here in a second, but I want to hit another topic that you brought up already a little bit about where we are right now. And you talked about how that was an illegal war. You've talked about how other things we've done have been illegal. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, yesterday went to pains to say, okay, no, this deal is totally legal. In fact, we are over compliant with the law. I almost hear a little Donald Rumsfeld in my ear, but anyway, what do you say to that?
Well, again, I've studied law. He's when he's saying over compliant, he's talking about the War Powers Act of 1973 and any subsequent modifications that have been made by the United States Congress. This is basically where Congress punted on its constitutional responsibilities and has given the President of the United States the ability to engage in military action if there's an imminent threat to the United States of such a scope and scale that he can't go to Congress. So Congress is saying, okay, we're going to let you go to war for 45 days, maybe 90, maybe up to 180 before you have to come to us and get permission. But it has to be an imminent threat. So here's where Marco Rubio falls apart. The threat cited is Iran's nuclear weapons program. As defined to Witkoff and Kushner, which they apparently took seriously, it wasn't a nuclear weapons program, meaning that the 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium hadn't been turned into something that could be a weapon. Moreover, we were engaged in a negotiating process, an ongoing negotiating process that the Iranians had not walked away from, and they were negotiating in good faith. So there's literally no case that can be made under any notion of the War Powers Act that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States. Insofar that it has been articulated as such, it's that Iran was preparing. I mean, if you remember initially, we had to preempt the Iranians who were seeking to attack us. Well, then the Pentagon had to come to the Congress and admit, actually, the Iranians weren't going to attack first. We know they weren't going to attack first. But what they were going to do is that when Israel attacked them, they were going to strike back at us. So therefore, we had to join Israel in attacking them to preempt their response. Marco Rubio, this is the problem. We don't know our own laws. I mean, this is the easiest thing. If you're
do you think we don't know our laws, or we just don't care about our own laws? Which is
we don't care about our laws. Again, I've been told by my wife, don't read the comments. Don't read the comments. So I'm doing my best to comply with her desires. But I just see so much ignorance in there about people who I can guarantee you right now, if I gave you a test of the Constitution, you would fail. If I asked you what Federalist 10 was, you would have no idea. You wouldn't know who wrote it. You wouldn't know what they were talking about. You wouldn't know its relevance to the current situation, nor would you know about Federalist 51. These are foundational documents the Supreme Court relies upon when they study constitutional issues that are brought before them. Issues that pertain to separation of powers, issues that pertain to the importance of the constitutional republic functioning as it is. Marco Rubio's words prove that this constitutional republic is not functioning the way it should be. We are a nation that has lost its moral compass. We are a nation that has been taken over by a literal cult of personality. Prove me wrong. We have a president who says, I don't believe in the rule of law. I believe in my own personal moral compass. That's an impeachable offense right off the bat. There's no reason why he should be president after that. No Congress worth its salt would tolerate a president saying that. He has said before the World Economic Forum, I am a dictator. Well, gosh, I can't disagree with that. It's one of the few honest things he said. And we have a Congress that is punted. When you have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, saying, "I don't know, this isn't a war. It's a defensive operation. This is a defensive series of defensive things that are defensive in nature." Dude, we attacked them. It wasn't defensive. We attacked them. An illegal
you
war.
can't give out a declaration of unconditional surrender from the president of the United States in a non-war situation that he laid out on the first day of the war to something that's virtually impossible with no ground force, with no army. You can't compel compliance. But I don't want to go back and repeat all that.
Because you brought this up. Okay. I'm glad the president now says that he's not going to send ground troops because that's reflects reality. You were in Desert Storm. I see Old Ironsides up there. Okay. I assume that you were in Desert Storm with Old Ironsides.
I actually served in Old Ironsides in 2000s, but I was with the 2nd U.S. Cavalry in Desert
Okay.
Storm.
Well, you were with the ground force. So you know what a tip fiddle is. You know what
I do.
Okay. And you know what it takes to move ground forces. You're probably of an age where you participated in some reforgers.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, there was a time, ladies and gentlemen, where we had 300,000 American troops in West Germany. And in the space of 10 days, we could fly in 250,000 reinforcements who would marry up with prepositioned equipment and leave and be ready to fight the Soviet horde coming across the border. That's what we trained for in the Cold War. I was in the Marine Corps as a junior officer doing the exact same training. But it doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you train, and you have the equipment prepositioned, et cetera. Today it takes, is Old Ironsides even up and running nowadays? I don't know.
Yeah, we still have it. Yeah.
Because I know we've shut down a number of armored divisions. But let's say we wanted to move a heavy brigade of Old Ironsides from its base in the United States to Europe to participate in the rotational forces of the heavy brigades. They need a 6-month advance notice. Then they need another 3 months to make the deployment, 9 months under peacetime conditions.